Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. This is Tanner.
Corey's here.
And Dave's here.
We're excited to share with you an episode on succession planning. We know that that's important to a lot of you producers because it's a topic that's hard to discuss, and we're here to make it easy to talk about.
It's one of the top topics that we always get requested, and the results show it. It's just a hard topic to talk about, and it's completely necessary. It provides so many pain points because we're working. It's hard in every business, but I think this one, the family aspect, really hurts.
Do you think that's because we have a bunch of young listeners that want to take over, or because we have a bunch of old farmers that want to not give it up?
I think it's all of the above. I mean, it's every aspect. I mean, farming spans several generations a lot of times, right? A lot of times you have people that are past their retirement age, and then they're just taking over the farm when they should be retiring, and then young kids that want to come back. It's a tough dynamic.
It is. Well, you can text us 515-207-9640, just like this listener did. Said, hey, quick question about your new show schedule. I heard you guys talked about a couple other podcasts, and I wanted to know when you're releasing those, or did I miss that information here? So that's a great question. We do have Rush Hour Ag, which is its own platform, and Beyond the Jacket, which is its own platform. So on the Farm for Profit channel, you still get us every Monday and every Thursday, but then those shows come out on Wednesday and Friday, if I'm correct, but they will be on their own platforms. So you got to
go a little deeper. Tell us what they are.
Rush Hour Ag is a policy-focused podcast. We're going to go over a minute. A policy-focused podcast. It talks about everything that affects you as a farmer and a small business owner in regards to political. A lot of Iowa focus, but we do get outside of the state. And then Beyond the Jacket is our FFA tribute podcast. So a lot of FFA students get to tell their story and what their projects are.
Awesome.
Yep. And Rush Hour's on Wednesday, Beyond the Jacket's on Friday. And if you want, we've talked about putting some more out of our own, doing some spinoffs and maybe doing a different day too. So if you guys want that, let us know.
Absolutely. But let's get into our guest today. He's not a stranger to this podcast. We've had Mike Downey on before with Uncommon Farms, but we're here, like we said, to talk about succession planning. How you doing?
Doing great. Hey, appreciate to be here live with you.
In the studio.
Alive. Did you say alive or alive? I'm glad we're all alive.
We're all alive. We're good.
This is the living experience. So, Mike, you drove all the way over here. Where are you from? Give our listeners a little background.
Over on the other side of the state, eastern Iowa, Mount Vernon, and just worked out well. Was kind of spending the week with the kids after our county fair, and we were down at Des Moines.
Man, you've already had county
That's
fair.
an early county fair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Then we get to enjoy the rest of summer, and we spend over to see the family farm in Dallas County on the way up this morning. So.
Did you see Gabby's fair project?
This
So
one?
this one's Cammie's project.
Oh. No, I didn't.
You didn't look? You walked right past it?
No.
Oh, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. What'd the kids take to the fair?
So, yeah, Molly, my 12-year-old, had two heifers, and then her and her little brother Luke, 8, shared a bucket bottle calf, and Molly was actually the champion.
Oh, wow.
Junior division bucket bottle. So
Cool.
We had some good highs. We also had a couple lows. That's what the fair is all about, right?
And bottle calves are some high dollar items
man.
right now.
I never thought I'd spend $1,000 to buy a calf.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Usually that's the byproduct of like, hey, I had one that had twins. You want one?
Yeah, you want one? Give it away. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And you get to spend some time with the family here. You said you drove past the family farm, and the significance is 1872. Tell us a little bit about that.
You bet, yeah. Michael and Timothy Downey, that's when it was homesteaded, and kids are out there wearing their 1872 shirts that we had made up a couple years ago. Was when we were recognized as one of the 150-year Heritage Farm Awards. And I know with succession planning, we talk about this word legacy a lot, which, it kind of hit me, honestly, when we came up to the stage that day. Iowa Secretary Mike Downey asked, who owns the farm? And that's kind of when it hit me, we weren't here about ownership. It was just family and friends getting together, a lot about memories, how was farming back then compared to today. So that's one thing when we talk about succession, it's a lot more than just assets and farms. There's so much you were mentioned before, Corey, just the feelings part of it with family.
So they have the 100-year award, at State Fair. They have a 150-year award. My wife's family is up for that next year. Is there as we keep going, is there going to be a 200-year award? I mean,
Ironically, I looked that up. And Molly out there likes to remind me how old I'll be when that occurs. I'll be 93 years old. So whether I'm there with them or below or above ground, I don't know. But
I think that's a pretty good goal.
Yeah. Right.
So, but just that the fact that they have these memories, even they're young today, I think that's one of the points I like to make is, with our transition planning is don't lose your opportunity to train and educate that next gen and, get them involved in those memories because I think they'll definitely remember that. So.
I think it's important, too, to get this message from somebody's family who's been there, done that, rather than trying to bring somebody in who has just a good idea. Obviously, it takes a lot to keep a family farm together, and for you guys to have done it as a family for over 150 years, that's a pretty telltale fact that maybe what we talk about today works.
Yeah, and to be honest, I have a lot of respect. It's not an active working farm anymore. This is more of a passive. It's rented out to a long-term tenant that has worked with our family. But I have a lot of respect for the farms that make it that are still active. And this legacy can be more about farms too. Even whether you're first generation or fifth generation, like I am, I think every farm has a story.
So we've talked about this before. What do you got, Corey?
No, I was just saying I'm glad that you still own it. And then you still live in Iowa. If Elliot was here, he would probably, that's one of his big deals is out-of-state landowners and, sending money out of the state, out of the community and all that kind of stuff. But, no, I'm glad you guys still own it.
Yeah, no. A lot of pride, obviously. And we feel fortunate. I actually grew up, ironically, on my mom's side of the farm in Illinois. So my dad was the son-in-law of the operation that I grew up on.
Do you guys farm back in eastern Iowa?
So my wife and I bought a farm over there. I help her cousin that operates their family farm a little bit in the fall when they need help and work back and forth with equipment for our own acres, our own.
Corey, what do you think's better? Because I'll run into this scenario too. Is it better to be a paper farmer? That's the term I'm going to give to it. Down at their 1872 farm where they rent it out, they own it. It's still the family legacy. Or do you take that, sell it, and move it back to where his operation is? It's still a legacy because you're still farming. It's just in a different location. I'm going to run into the same scenario. Do we sell my wife's dad's farm where we don't live and we'd basically paper farm it? Or do we bring it back home and add it to ours, use the cash? Is the legacy the farming aspect or is it the actual land?
That's you hit it on the head. That might be different for everyone. We just paid respects down at Perry to our ancestors there, and if I were to do that, I'd be afraid that a lot of them would be rolling over in their grave probably. But but I totally get what you're saying.
Yep,
that's a tough one. I don't know if there's a right answer for that. I mean, it's just like everything in farming, it's situational, right? What's putting the most in your pocket. I'm guessing that you probably have other family members that are involved in the ownership of that farm, or is it just you?
Yeah, so we unfortunately lost my dad unexpectedly a couple years ago, so it just turned out that we baught that from his estate. So
okay,
yeah,
so
right.
You just solely own it.
Yep, and then there's another part of the farm that's owned with my aunt's family.
Right. So when you, Dave, talk about your wife's family's ground, she does have brothers and sisters that have ownership in that, or potentially I don't know the background, but I think that's probably there's a lot more dynamics, and that's where the succession planning comes in. That needs to come through.
Yeah, so I'm fifth generation. Here's another spin. I'm the third generation that's paying for the farm.
Oh, yeah.
So and then can we afford to continue to pay for the same farm at every generation? And
right.
It's sometimes that's just inevitable. It's something we can't get around, but at least really spending time on the numbers and what that looks like, because today's numbers, what it appraised for a couple of years ago, was a lot different than 2 or 3 generations ago.
We talked about your operation, Corey. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Oh, you're good.
And how you went from I want to farm it to maybe to make ends meet, we pivot a little bit. We still want farmland, but maybe it's even pseudo-development farmland or pseudo seed corn farmland. I mean, we're pivoting on what our options were to stay relevant in the legacy of farming.
Yeah, I mean, it's an investment at that point, right? If you're starting to pick and choose, and I'm going to go to the edge of this town because they're paying really good or whatever, and people do that.
Yeah.
But is that farming? Yeah, I guess. It's
The city
investing with farmland.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that agriculture is unique to an extent as far as succession planning goes, but we've also got a lot of small business owners. I was even joking with Zach Johnson when we were hanging out with him at National Farm Machinery Show about what the succession plan is for his YouTube channel. Right? Like, he's eventually going to become not cool.
Yeah, I was asked.
He's already not cool.
He's already not cool.
Yeah, I was asked to do a talk to a group of ag business consultants, and I was thinking beforehand, how am I going to change my message? Because I'm used to working a lot with farmers, but really at the end of the day, I didn't change a whole lot because the same concepts, issues, and everything are really the same. Secession is not just a farmer dilemma. I think it's an industry-wide agriculture dilemma.
So let's start diving into it. One of the things that when you sat on that chair over there on the other side of the table, you asked what I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to pick from your experience as to what you've seen from the most successful farm transitions to share kind of some highlights with our audience. Obviously, they can dive deeper. One, they can reach out to you. Two, they can go and hang out with you in a public event that we're going to pitch here towards the end of the show. But what have you seen as things that have been done to make a farm transition successful?
Yeah, no, so I actually did a lot of work on this last winter. Came up with a talk about what are the common traits of those that do successfully transition, because a lot of times what we hear is, what to avoid these mistakes and these common pitfalls. How can we spin that around? Because I think, the data says that less than 5% of farms make it to 3 or 4 generations. So what are those common traits that all of those farms share? I spent a long time reaching out to other peers and mentors, Dr. Ron Hansen, others, Steve Bohr, who I worked with a number of years, and Dick Whitman. And there's one theme that really came to the top of all of these 6 or 7, and that is that the farms that do experience it and really spend a lot of time on is they prioritize succession first, then estate planning, and understanding the difference between the two. Because I think I meet with a lot of folks that have a will and a trust, and they think they're in good shape, but I really want to just hear from them. What does a successful transition look like to you if you just ignore all of that? And a lot of times when you look at their estate planning documents and you just play those out, it really doesn't complement what they just communicated on what they want to see done, long term.
So you're saying there's a difference in what happens when we die versus how do we transition?
Absolutely. I mean, I just listened to your recent show where you were talking about sweat equity and fair pay and compensation. Those things are typically not addressed in an estate plan. That is part of another component of succession that not everybody thinks about.
That was Corey just complaining about minimum wage.
No, I wasn't.
He's supposed to have to pay him more.
The title, I don't know if that was Jess or Rachel that made that title, but it sure was intriguing or grabbing, I guess, because it was talking about entitlement, right? And I don't know if I thought of that when I was saying that. I wasn't, but it is true, right? Like, we aren't entitled to anything, really. So,
and guess in my conversation with Dr. Ron Hansen, who's worked with farms for 40 years, guess what he said is the biggest thing he's seen change in his 40 years?
Entitlement.
Greed and entitlement.
Yep.
yeah,
I get to farm because my dad.
you were born into it.
I'm born into it.
I have to farm. That's what I'm going to do. So
Interesting. So when you do see these farms that prioritize it, what do those actions look like? Is it monthly meetings? Is it having the written plan that's more extensive than a will? What does it mean to prioritize that?
Well, I think to start with, just really prioritizing what your goals are, your long-term goals, and if we can ignore all the noise around us, tax laws, wills, trusts, LLCs, all these things that people want to ask about right away because that's what they see everybody else doing. Yeah. Instead, just in a perfect world, what's it look like? What is a perfect outcome? And then we start prioritizing the different goals. And I do want to offer a resource at the end or in the show notes of I've come up with a one-page just list of common goals that farms have listed out, because sometimes that just helps people prioritize their 3 or 4 or 5 top goals, and then now we can start developing a roadmap to work on as we go through the process. because it's not a one and done plan, as you recognize with succession planning. It's a living and evolving plan that we got to continue to work on.
So let's answer the question. Back to Tanner's question. We said, yeah, they prioritize it. Okay, what? What are we supposed to do? Let's give them a nugget that they can take away while listening. What are they? What else? Any more?
You bet. So do we want to prioritize passing a viable farm to the next gen?
Okay.
That's a very common one. Find an exit strategy for the senior generation in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Obviously, a common one I hear a lot is keep it in the family. By the way, I don't think I've ever met a farmer that hasn't communicated that they want to see the farm stay in the family. But as you mentioned before, this is a difficult subject for a lot of them to even talk about, because this farming occupation, it's just different. It's just a different animal to work with. Protecting the farm, that's another very common one, because we've spent our whole career building this, or keeping it from the generation before, and we don't want to lose it. I saw that happen with my own family farm, just becoming almost deathly scared of losing it. So obviously wealth preservation and protecting the farm is a part of that as well.
So identifying that goal sounds important.
It's very important to most farmers that you keep it in the family. But then there's a lot of farmers that don't have successors, or they do, but maybe they're not interested. They went off and got a tech job, or, and really don't want that, or get into financial issues. I think it also needs to be said that it is okay if you don't want to succeed the farm as well, right?
Right. Well, I think the last time I was on a show with you, I was actually representing Next Gen Ag Advocates is a company I'm a part of that focused on non-family transitions that I think is probably going to become more common in the future within the industry.
Let's talk about this for a second. So I got 2 boys. One's in high school, one's in grade school, and I'm in a real estate firm. I'd love for them. So you said start being forward-minded, thinking about succession. So here I am sitting at this table thinking, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that my boys take it over, that I set them up? Every time I have this conversation with my wife, she's like, what if our boys don't want to do it? So we haven't pushed anything forward. Of course, they're too young to even have that conversation yet. So, Corey, I assume you and your dad probably didn't even have the conversation until after you were done with college.
Oh, no, there's probably conversations before that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, if you want to come back and farm before you go to college, you want to come right back to the farm, usually right after high school.
Yeah.
Like you would love to. That's when you're most active. You're putting up hay, you're doing livestock, all that. And then my parents said, no, you're going to go to college and work for some other people.
So that conversation started earlier than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the deal. You're a family business. Farming's a family business. But, I mean, there's something different about farming than just whether you own a plumbing family business or whatever. It is like it's in your blood from the beginning. If you want it to be, if you're involved. So I don't know what it is.
And I try not to even use the R word anymore in my vocabulary. Retirement. It's, instead, what can we transition to something different? Because it's, for a lot of them, it's their identity. So why take it away from them?
Yeah, I mean, if you own a family plumbing business, you don't get to retirement age and go, well, I'm just going to keep plumbing a little bit on the side, or, whatever. It's you're retired, and then the kids or whoever takes it over. Maybe on you could keep selling ground.
Oh,
in your
yeah.
80s or
you
whatever.
can do it until you die. But it, we have all the same concerns. Hey, we built something. How do we not lose it? How do we make sure that the kids do it justice? Do we send them to business school? How do we suggest it? I mean, like all the things, but I don't think they're ready to have that conversation. And I don't want to, what would the word be? Stipend their success as an anesthesiologist or as something else potential, and just drive my goals to what I'd like that. I mean, it can be a good career, but it might not be theirs.
Yeah, you don't want to downplay something that they're
I don't want to
interested
downplay. So we've tried to keep it under the wraps and not have the conversation about it until I think the time's right. Which brings me to my question: when's the right time?
Well,
what's the age? What's the time?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean not everybody, like Corey's family, has that conversation, but we're working with a lot of farms now where we start the conversation when the kids are in high school. Mm-hmm. How are we going to communicate future employment? Do they need to go get farm or experience, off the farm first before they come back? I have one family is like, you need to bring us back a business plan.
Yeah.
You know, how are you going to add to the business? You know, so how are we going to communicate employment and compensation and decision making? You know, all of these things, and so they kind of know what to expect when they do come back.
When I think of running a farm, we preach running a farm like a business a lot, right? So when you start dealing with family, I was listening to Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, on the CEO podcast, and he says, I commend people that work with family because it brings this whole other dynamic into it, because a lot of times that person that wants to come back to the farm isn't the best employee for your business, right? So they have to come back and almost be a burden and then learn and teach and all that if you didn't have it before. So it's so tough.
People ask me all the time, what's easier, working with non-family transitions or in the family? And I think in a lot of cases the answer to that question is non-family, because they're approaching that more as a business transaction.
Yeah, I will say there's a lot less, for what we've witnessed, a lot less forgiving conversations or decisions when it's non-family. We had the gentleman from Ag Leader was in here and kind of worked through that program. His landlord and the guy that helped him get started in farming is non-family. But he also then kind of pulled a fast one on him and said, you need your own combine this fall in August.
Kind of forced him to.
Yeah, so it was like, oh, there might not have been that if it was dad or grandpa, but also could have been. But I just want to kind of go back to, comparing this to Dave's business and a plumbing business. There's one thing very unique about agriculture, and it's the asset value. Plumbers can run a plumbing business, but you might have 20 pickup trucks.
Correct.
And a couple of trailers and a bunch of plumbing tools and plumbing supplies, but you're probably not going to have
millions
of dollars in equipment and farmland. Is that inaccurate?
Yeah, no, I would agree, but there's also the, just the value of this, again, this intangible thing that we've touched on is the way of life. The great way to raise a family that a lot of people seek, because in a lot of cases that's what we're trying to pass down too. And but I totally get it. The numbers, the cash flow, the feasibility, that's one of the biggest dilemmas we're working with a lot of farms right now. It's just getting your head wrapped around. Just because Dave auctions a farm for that price or gets appraised for that price is, let's make sure we understand how that impacts the next generation and the viability.
So we kind of got one common trait. What's another common trait?
Well, the second one we kind of touched on already is they identify and train their next generation successors, the future managers and leaders. They do that now, early. Get the next gen involved as early as you can. I think as a general rule, agriculture as an industry, that we've not done a good job of that. Yeah.
So they're working to transition before death.
Absolutely.
That doesn't happen a lot. What would you say is the percentage of farm transitions that happen after death?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, a high percentage, because that's what our tax laws incentivize. Words.
That's where the taxes are.
Words like step up in basis. What are the two certainties in life?
Death
and taxes. Well, it's ironic that one motivates people to do planning a lot more than others. So,
if Rush Hour Ag gets one thing done, they will have that fixed. That's
it's a major goal of theirs.
It's a major goal of theirs is to provide. Well, they're working with some people on, I don't know, what do you call it?
Lobby to try and draft bills
to get like a stepped up basis while you're alive.
Yeah.
Right. So you can choose. Right. It's always better making decisions when you're warm rather than cold.
Yeah, and I think I just saw Paul Neefer put out a piece, or there's some new legislature out there about offering an incentive if you sell to a active farmer that you'd exempt you from paying capital gain tax. So
yeah, I couldn't tell if it was an AI TikTok of Trump or if it was legitimately one of his speeches, but he was talking about some of the reform that he wanted to put in place. And
in the big beautiful bill?
Yeah, he made a joke about, if the farmer likes his kid, this is an incentive for him to pass it. But we all know that sometimes we don't like our children. So if that's the case, then you don't have to use it. And just
that's so hard, because everybody I talk to is like, oh, farmers just get mailbox money. They get every tax law incentive out there. Can the plumber then do the same thing?
So he in this TikTok, granted, a lot of depth of information coming out of one TikTok, said that it was for all businesses. All businesses would benefit.
They
talked
have
about
to, because I was thinking, man, how does that apply if a law firm wants to hand it down, or a somebody rather than just ag?
Well, it does feel like there's a little bit of a war against farmers, though. Right?
Well, I don't want to go down a different tangent, but that's a huge trend I'm seeing, is this disconnect between just the consumer and who the farmer is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm working with one farm now. You talk about a marketing plan, you think about marketing grain, right?
Yeah.
They're putting a marketing plan together just in their local community to let people know who they are, because they're afraid that their customer hates them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this Des Moines Waterworks deal is, I mean, you go on Facebook for 20 minutes and you see it all over the place, and just the comment sections are crazy.
Yeah.
It might just be because I haven't seen a single thing. It might just be an algorithm that you clicked on, or somebody knows your.
I mean, it's KCCI, WHO. I mean, there's articles coming out
Really?
every
I haven't
day,
seen
and
it.
I don't watch them on TV. I get it on social.
Huh.
Right.
So, yeah, I might have commented on a couple.
Yeah.
So I probably
You're
am getting
hooked.
fed, but it's still alarming that there's 600 comments on there, and probably 75% of them are stupid farmers, stupid hog confinement, stupid this, stupid that, and it's like, oh, fine, we'll just all quit. You guys, grow your own food. You know.
So going back to your training, you said the second thing would be that they train the next gen. What are they training them? They're not training them to farm. Are you saying training them to make decisions that will impact their next generation, correct?
Or just to carry on the business, you know.
Okay, so they're
You know, what if, take out a piece of paper and, fill in who is doing what role in the operation, who's wearing what hats, and you pull out one of those key people, unfortunately something happens to them, can the business continue to thrive and survive?
So more training business management rather than here's how to load the hay or here's how to load the grain. So rather than task oriented, we're doing more business management education, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
What's another one?
well, the next one is you guys touched on that show you did recently, but this fair and equal word that we hear or phrase that a lot of people just try to avoid, actually rolling your sleeves up and figuring that out. And that's whether it's fair wages, compensation, or if it's asset values, going back to your point, Tanner's, whatever it is, just really, wrapping our heads around. I'm asked to review these buy-sell agreements and operating agreements of entities all the time, and I would say the majority of the time they're just boilerplate agreements, but that, to a certain extent, whatever assets those entities are holding, sometimes that's where the succession guidance is within those documents. So if something happens and someone exits, let's understand what that looks like. What's that going to impact the business?
So when you're doing succession planning, who gets to decide whether it's fair and equal? The beneficiaries or the person that's giving or setting the asset value?
That's usually the question that I ask to the family I'm working with, but because it's a mixed bag approach, I would say a general rule, most try to bring everybody in as a family or non-family, depending on the business. We don't have to be just talking about family because Corey, I have farms that have non-family partners in the day-to-day because they have better qualities and experience to carry out those businesses. So
I think if you bring everyone in and you're just an open book while everyone is healthy and it's not on a deathbed, it's not after death or anything like that, I think generally families are pretty civil, right? And if you can sit there and go, hey, Timmy, you've been on the farm. Like our example in that last show was we had 3 people. One person was on the farm for 15 years helping the farm. The others went off and had jobs off farm, even out of state maybe. But if you bring everyone in, I think they'd be, well, yeah, he or she has put in the sweat equity, right? They maybe should get a little bit more.
And I don't even think necessarily we get to the more category, right? Because that might be fitting into the fair, but the equal is interesting. Dave and I have had this conversation a lot. Family's got 320 acres, and they've got, say they've got 4 siblings. Will they each get an 80? Okay. 180 is probably more valuable than the other. 180 is probably more close to the home operation, something along those lines of, okay, 80 acres is equal. But is it fair?
yeah, I spend a lot of time, there's fair market value, but what's your family market value or your business market value? Those might be different. And, think about how we've talked about plumbing businesses and your business. How do you think a lot of businesses across the country value their business if they're having these conversations?
Overvalue.
Well, a lot of times they don't own assets, so it's based on the income it generates, right?
3 years of gross, right?
Yeah.
So I'm working with more. I'm seeing a trend of folks going away from asset valuations to using some type of a EBITDA factor formula.
Yep.
Or, for farmland, you can use something called special use valuation.
I get on the other side of it. So I'm after death. So after they didn't have the conversation, or then maybe they did, and boy, you said if you all get in the same room, Corey, that everybody's pretty amicable. Well, we normally don't want to piss off the hand that feeds us, and we don't want to piss off the siblings, even though we probably have our opinion. We normally learn to bite our lip and bite our time because we know there might be something in the long run, and we don't want to, again, bite the hand that could potentially feed us. So I don't know that all the actual conversation comes out in that environment, or the real conversation. But boy, afterwards, you see some real conversations real quick, and there gets some clause and attorneys and a lot of other stuff involved. And then you're like, well, maybe this wouldn't have been as amicable as you think if we all got in the room. I'm guessing there's a listener out there that thinks that my brother would light me up in a meeting, but he won't say anything because he knows it'll make Dad mad. I wonder how honest we are in those meetings.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. You go back to that TikTok that we put out where the base of that conversation came in. It had a listener write in saying, okay, that's fine. One sibling worked there and earned a wage, so they got paid for their time to be there. Why do they deserve more? The scenario that they provided us is one sibling showed no interest in coming back farming until his parent died.
Yep.
So there was no indication that person worked a job, got paid fair wages at their job the entire time, and now was like, oh, yeah, I could farm. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, that's where folks that do delay those conversations to after death, that's where it can get away from us and things go the wrong direction, whereas going back to having the meeting with the family, that's my favorite part. Let's have the meeting now. Usually the pent-up worry or concern over that from Mom and Dad usually turns more into the kids saying, thanks, Mom and Dad, for doing this. Now we know what the plan is, and it takes a lot of the pressure then, off after death.
Well, you asked the question of who's making that decision, the successors or the people passing
Beneficiary,
it?
yeah.
Right? That's where, it's the people passing it. Just saying, bringing everyone in. I don't care if people aren't being truthful in that conversation. This is what Mom and Dad wanted.
Correct.
Right? They heard it from their mouth while they were living. This was their,
And I'd rather have it because it's their asset to deal with, and then the beneficiaries aren't entitled. Like, you're getting this or you get this. I want to see this. I'd love you to take it over. We want to give this guy a 75% break because we feel that he was entitled. It's their position in my world to make that decision. But I wonder, maybe you can tell us, I've never been in one of those conversations to do the kids, what would you like? What would you like, Tanner? And then they get to say what they'd like. And maybe normally one sibling is a lot more vocal than the other. And it's the loudest greasy wheel gets the grease,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. Then you get, some other folks, talking in your ear, in-laws or financial advisors or whoever, that can obviously sway that as well. I remember very vividly one older couple I worked with that didn't want to have a family meeting, but they hand wrote a note in their will that their kids would read one day. And I don't remember it verbatim, but I just remember, one of the top statements was that, we're establishing a difference between fair and equal. And the next one was, the last one was, if our intent is for our family not to have a fight or dispute, and if that does happen, we just as soon give our estate away to charity.
Oh.
And so that set a real precedent in that family.
The other thing,
I don't hate that.
the other factor that comes into this is you're bringing outside family in a lot of times, right? So maybe you had conversations as kids or whatever, and then they grow up and they get married, and then you bring spouses in. Now there's just opinions from everywhere coming in.
You'd be surprised how many people call me for a land valuation. I said, what are you doing? Oh, we have a family meeting coming up.
Yeah.
And they're just one of the five, and so they wanted to come in prepared. So they had already been doing research online, and it was like a spouse of hey, my husband's in potentially getting this.
That brings up a really good point. So, listeners, if that's you and you want a free land evaluation from Dave, you need to subscribe to our Patreon page.
Yep.
'Cause that's one of the benefits that you get as a paid member of our Patreon page. But
Way cheaper than paying him for an evaluation.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Just one.
Yep, just one. It does have its limitations. You may want to come back for more because of how good a job he does. But we thank you for all the topic suggestions, just like this one that you bring us, farmforprofitllc@gmail.com. Come find us. We're going to be at Tech Hub Live this summer. We're also going to be at Ag PhD Days. And then, of course, we'll hit up that Farm Progress Show this fall as well as Husker Harvest. So we'll be out and about. And I want to hear, before we get into another common trait, you get to talk about some of these things and a lot more stuff in depth because you have an event coming up.
Absolutely, yeah. Right here down the road in Des Moines, actually, July 23rd, Uncommon Farms. We're putting together a one-day succession planning workshop where our hope is to actually take participants through a typical process, and we communicate 4 components of succession planning, estate planning just being one of those components, and then a number of the other things that we've talked about today that we'll touch on, and then hit the timeout button 2 or 3 times during the day to allow them to work on their own situation. And
Oh, that's kind of neat. Actually giving them time during the day you don't have to do it as homework. You can do it here.
absolutely.
So this is the same time as Tech Hub Live
Oh.
is going on. So we will be in Des Moines. You could come to the first 2 days of Tech Hub Live on the 21st and 22nd and then go to this.
Double whammy.
Yeah.
Do people say that anymore?
Just you.
Just me.
Pow! Is that what it is?
Oh, that's good. Okay, what's another key common trait? We've got they prioritized it. They established their goals. They've trained the next generation or started training the next generation ahead of time, and now they're making that differentiation between fair and equal.
You bet. So yeah, from there, we've hit it on it too, but communication. Communicate. That's probably not a surprise, but those that really 100% making an investment in communication, having those tough conversations that others avoid, going so far to understand what everybody's communication and personality traits are. Because, I've working with one situation now where one of the senior partners, I don't know why he's been so difficult. This is just a key employee to communicate with. Well, they did a personality assessment and they realized that their communication styles were just at the exact opposite of the extreme. But just that alone, understanding that, totally changed that dynamic, that relationship.
What do you use for that?
Oh, there's so many different ones. Uncommon Farms, we use colors training,
Okay.
but there's, DISC and a number of different other
We did
ones too.
Colby.
Yes. Yep.
Did that, gosh, it was probably before 2020. My aunt did it, and we all just bickered. We didn't want to answer all those questions, but it was crazy how it came out, and you're like, this makes so much more sense now. Why I leave the shop dirty and why it stresses my brother out, or whatever. Just little nuances like that. It does help.
Yeah, so the colors, you're either a green, orange, blue, or gold, and it's just funny how when you start talking to somebody, you know that they're an orange and I'm a green, that it does help, with that conversation. So,
Do you ever see people change in their color as they get older and mature?
I'm not a certified colors, but our folks that are say that you can naturally change just as life happens and experiences
I would
happen.
like to take that Colby again because I think maybe I had a young daughter at the time, but I didn't have both, and weren't old, and I didn't go through COVID, and I wasn't on this podcast. I feel like I've changed quite a bit.
I think so. I think a little bit, but
I've done a lot of those too, and sometimes you are a different person at work than you are as a person. That makes sense? So yeah, sometimes if you're working with family, you may interact differently than if you are, having a family gathering for 4th of July.
have you seen, Mike, when we talk about, who the most successful are, have you seen guys that are really successful in transition let the younger generation start earlier and be the decision makers? I think of my dad, and he kind of wanted to stay decision maker, until he felt that it was his time to retire, which was never. Or do you see some of those guys that come into your office that have that conversation? Are they the ones that are, I'm going to call them progressive?
Yeah, I would say if you're on this list, you're on the progressive side, and you're recognizing you need to let them get involved with some skin in the game, and recognize that mistakes are going to happen. Hopefully you can do that in a manner.
Let them be wrong. Yep.
Yeah. Do it in a manner where that it doesn't sink the whole business. Give them some rope, but not too much. As you start, and then you just obviously, as the transition occurs, you give them more and more, and until they are more than capable to run the business themselves. So.
Now I got one more. Do girls and guys do that different? I want to think of my kid. I want to give him rope to let him go do stuff and like driving. My kid's driving. And I'm like, let him go. If he gets in an accident, he'll figure it out. He'll figure out it's too fast. I pulled that trailer the wrong, whatever. And my wife's like, oh no, we just won't let him do it. So I wonder if females are more protective and say, nope, you get no bandwidth. And I'm like, let him go. Let him make a mistake.
Yeah, I haven't seen a gender difference. I've seen though is a generational, where my grandparents' generation, as a general rule, was more close-knit, everything kept to the chest,
Okay.
But that generation below them grew up with that, and that impacts them on how they do that with their own kids.
Huh. Do you guys get that?
I think your parents are still letting you make your mistakes, because every time I talk to you, you're having a power washer fall off a trailer, or a wheel fall off a trailer, or getting another ticket. Yeah.
These are private stories on the back of Patreon. These are not for this podcast.
I think your kid's a better driver than you are.
Possibly.
He's the one that's giving you the update on where the cops are sitting.
Yeah, he texts me. He's like, hey, coming into Huxley, there's 3 cops. So.
But I see the generational side, especially it seems like it affects things that somebody wants to do and not want to do because their parents did or didn't do it. I definitely see it on my spouse. I see that in some of the things for myself that, everything from the way you interact or the way you show up at a family gathering or if you go. Certainly can play.
Even communication,
Yep.
Every generation grew up communicating in a different way. And
Yeah.
I even feel kind of embarrassed. You guys keep talking about TikTok, and I didn't think I was that much older than you, but I'm still not on TikTok. So
Yeah. I don't know why we always
You
bring that up.
are. I mean, if you consume Facebook Reels and or Instagram Reels and Shorts, you're on TikTok.
You're on
just
it.
on a
Okay.
different
It
version.
just comes a couple days later.
Yeah.
Although I see you a whole lot more on LinkedIn than anybody else.
I can just handle one platform, and that's it. And
LinkedIn
Right.
has come around.
I would say.
Yeah.
It's just all they did was copy Facebook and do the same thing.
I know, but they sure. I mean, I never understood why they did what they did, and now it makes a lot more sense business-wise.
Okay, so on this communication topic, I want to know. I want like one nugget for our listeners. What have you seen been the most successful way to start that communication? We already talked about having the personality test done. That's a tip.
Mm-hmm.
But on an overall basis, is it writing a letter? Is it setting up a party? I'm just reflecting on the episodes we've recorded before on succession planning, where sometimes they suggest throwing a party, but the first hour is this conversation followed by the
Get with your
celebration.
siblings first and say, let's approach the parents.
Oh yeah, kind of have a 3-on-1 or 3-on-2
3
effect.
on 1. Yeah. Just an intervention? No, it's a farm meeting.
yeah, and then communication can be different, different formats depending on who the parties are present there. If it's the day-to-day farm, with the team, the employees versus the owners meetings or manager meetings. But I would say those that commit to, hey, Monday morning at 9 a.m. or Saturday morning, some date that we're always going to sit down and have a conversation, because then everybody gets busy. Otherwise, if you don't have that process, as you know, everybody's just busy, and you delay it, then next thing you know, a month goes by and 2 months goes by, and so.
I thought you were supposed to throw the will down, Corey, and be like, what the hell is this? I deserve better.
I don't know that would go over too well.
I deserve better.
Yeah.
No, what you do is you throw down your copy
Yeah.
of how you edit it.
This is
saying,
how I think it should
I
go,
think this
boys."
is the way it should go.
Yeah.
How do you manage it? Because it's not a one meeting. It's not a 1 year thing. Usually it's continuing. Like you said, it's kind of evergreen. Like, should one person kind of manage it and say, we're getting together here, or is it a team effort?
I mean, that's a great point. I've found that somebody has to be accountable. Who's the person going to make everybody accountable? Mm-hmm. Is that mom? Is that dad? Is that a sibling, a spouse, somebody, an advisor?
Yeah.
Somebody to keep everybody accountable.
How often do you update it? Even ourselves, my wife and I, we need to go back in and update our will. Because before it was before kids, and now it's with kids. And then now there's a whole lot more asset than we had 10 years ago. I'm guessing, Corey, you have more asset now than you had 15 years ago as well. So now that maybe there's bigger numbers and more decisions to be made. Is it like a 2-year, 5-year?
We usually recommend every 3 to 5 years. Let's sit down and review. Some farms do it every year, but again, that's an estate plan. But obviously, this transition thing is a lot more than a will too. When I'm talking about communication, I'm talking more of the day-to-day of the leaders and the managers and the key employees and so forth. And
that asset value is interesting. I think we've probably always had problems with transition. It's always been tough, but now we're not talking hundreds of thousands anymore. We're talking millions. I mean, if you own 80 acres, you're a millionaire, right? Just free out in Iowa, right? There's some places you wouldn't be, but I think that's where a lot of this difficulty comes in, because everyone can be civil until they go, oh, that's $15 million.
And because of the tax laws that we talked about earlier, after death, that is a true million that you can get tax-free. So
yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they're in that game and the parents realize that there's millions, I think more conversations are happening because now there's more tax laws that affect it. We used to butt up on that 1 million mark, and then it was 5 million, then it was 11.7 million for inheritance tax. And so I think a lot of our folks realize that, wow, we have a lot more asset than we had when we were in the 80s or in the 50s. And so now they're having those conversations maybe more just because of the value.
And then the off-farm kids are like, why have we been living like we're poor all of our life?
Yeah. Equity is different than cash.
Well, you mentioned the $1 million. The only reason I'm sitting here today was, back in 2012 was when we were going to have that big sunset to $1 million. And that motivated a lot of people to do planning, including my own parents. And that's when I was first exposed to.
This next year, it sets to sunset again if we don't come up with a new farm bill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So.
Yeah, I was just looking for the email. I know we had a listener write in that came up. It was more of a venting email than anything else, but I remember him talking about how he was frustrated that his dad wasn't willing to take on debt at his age. That would help the farm expand, which would ultimately benefit him in the future, and was asking for feedback on that. Do you ever come across somebody that says, "Nah, I'm 70. I don't need any more debt"?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of my first families I work with, that reminds me of that. The call was from a 70-year-old, and in walking with him to the appointment was his 92-year-old father, and they were still working 50-50 shares. But by the end of that process, the 70-year-old says, "I don't want to go into any more debt." We were talking more about a plan to his kids in their 30s and 40s. Basically skipping over him. That's what we call the sandwich generation. That just because people are living longer and longevity and can continue to farm longer.
Ooh, here's a question for you. What age do you want to retire, all of you?
Well, it's interesting because I've talked about this.
45.
That I'm never going to retire.
I love it.
I'm just going to choose to do what I want to do. I mean, if that's the case, I'm there now.
All right, fair enough. How about you?
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback off that too, that I've tried to remove the R word from my vocabulary, that hopefully I can just enjoy. If I want to work 20 hours a week, can do that, and something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, I guess that's probably a caveat. I do work a lot.
You can't take the retirement till when? 65?
That's
like 401k?
Your Social Security and pull out of your investment accounts.
Otherwise, you get penalized.
Yeah.
Government jobs, 55. Some of them. Yeah. All right, fair enough.
So back to that scenario, I tried providing a little bit of insight, because if Dad didn't want the debt, but there's a farm across the road that they could buy, Dad's got the assets to where there's a couple of things you can do. You can have Dad pledge collateral, but then the liability falls on the son who signs the note as far as a loan agreement goes. Could offer to buy on contract with some type of a guarantee from the parent. Those things get a little trickier when it comes to succession planning. If Dad passes and this farm's tied up as collateral on his loan, unless you make that plan that if that's the farm that they were going to inherit anyway, you don't inherit as much equity because you're carrying the note on it. So there's things that can happen, but I just wondered how common that I'm too old for a debt.
I mean, very common, because just the demographics, who holds all the equity and cash flow. It's, the numbers better than I do, Dave, on the age of landowners and where all the wealth is. And everybody that was looking for opportunity has very little equity and cash flow. And I've also seen that flip around the other way, Tanner, where the next gen, mom and dad are ready. They're ready to pass the farm over, but the kids learn about their financial, where they're at, their picture, and the debt that they have. And the kids say, Mom and Dad, you need to get your financial house in order before we are going to take a serious interest in stepping into this. So.
It's crazy. Back in the 70s, every parent recommended their kids, go to college. You can't make it on the farm. You'll never make it. Don't try to farm. And now every kid seems to want to come back. And
that was it. I mean, it was when I was looking at going to college in 2006. It was the same thing. There's no room for you on the farm. Not right now.
Yep.
You need to go get educated and then go work for someone else. And then if there's a spot, you can come back. But if there's not, then at least you have a education and experience.
Yeah, that's what I was told. 5 years, and now I am 25 years later, sitting here in Slater, Iowa, with you guys.
And that's the risk, right? If you send your kid off, they might not come back.
Yeah, and it's not always grass is greener. It just becomes.
And that's where I want to go back to your as parents. Like, when do we have our kids in? I think as a parent, you have the conversation. This could be a path that you might want to take, but if you don't, I'm happy. I just want you to be successful and happy.
I'm gonna test you guys, right? Your kids right now are all seniors. What do you give them? What are you gonna have as a conversation with them as a senior in high school?
But the farm is exactly where it is now.
Yep.
I mean, that's just what I said. I would do everything in my power. This is our life. This is how we make money. This is what we do. This is an option for you. But you're not going to come back just because you're entitled to come back. You're going to come back and bring something back to the farm, whether it's I need labor, whether it's a trucking business, seed, something completely different at the time. But if you don't, and I'd have that conversation, if you don't come back, that's completely fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I want you to be successful in life. I want you to be happy. And I don't want you to come back because you think that I want you to come back.
What about you, Dave?
my advice is what I'm giving my kid already, and that's that you're going to have to work the rest of your life, and jobs can suck and jobs can be pretty fun. I've already worked a couple different careers. Both of them were fun, and I enjoyed them. If you count this, then 3 different things are fun. But somewhere along the way, I realized that money helps too. And so, not to be the materialistic weasel of the bunch, but boy, I wish I would have tried to chase that one that was fun and made a little bit of money at the same time. So, of course, our farm operation is nothing to make enough money to even sustain. So I'm giving advice like, all right, we're at career day at the high school. Which one of these jobs paid the best? Oh, anesthesiology, $400,000 a year. Maybe you want to go this route towards this, at least chase it and see if you like it. So we're just testing every job right now to let them know that it's out there. I didn't even know that was a job when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't know half of the jobs that are out there were out there. Didn't know you could be a podcast host. Didn't know there was a podcast. There wasn't back then. But I mean, stuff like that, like just to expose our kids. I'm just trying to expose them to all the cool things that are out there, see what they like to do, and then see if we can steer them towards the ones that pay well that they like to do.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, well, the other reality that I would add, I was just thinking about, another trend we haven't talked about here today, but, part add on to your conversation to your kids, Corey, that, hey, we may not be able to support you. You might have to have other income, off-farm income, or bring another enterprise, supplemental income. Unfortunately, that's probably a reality of, if you want to be in this farming gig, it's, I'm seeing more and more of that as well.
I wanted it so bad that I made a position for myself, right? I was out, I had a one-page sheet of just ideas of what I could do to come back to the farm and add value. And I think I ended up doing 3 of them to come back. We planted a different crop, a high-value fruit crop, which failed tremendously. We got into livestock, and we ended up buying a hog site. That was the way that it, physically, this can pay for my position on the farm. We knew it ahead of time, contract feeding hogs. And then seed sales.
You found a solution.
And I made it. I willed my way in there, because I was living an hour away working for a seed company, but that's how much I wanted it.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I knew I couldn't just come back.
That's an interesting word you just said, the want. That I've also heard it, the that it factor. Do you have it or do you don't have it? And not everybody has it. So.
Yep.
Well, we're trying to distract Mike here at the end of this show. We got a couple of special guests, but before we get to them, I wanted to kind of wrap up the conversation. Did we get all of the common traits, or did we leave enough for someone to come and hear about at your event?
Yeah, there's a few others, but yeah, I mean, we'll touch on all of those, and again, take folks through that process I mentioned. My goal is at the end of the day that they walk away with sketching out an action plan of their own, next steps.
Got to save something for July 23rd.
That's
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And if they can't come on the 23rd, does that mean they missed out?
Well, to be honest with you, I feel like I thrive the best one-on-one, with folks. The workshops is great to provide information and get people thinking and maybe get them over the edge. Maybe we do need to do something. And we have a series of others, by the way. If you missed Des Moines, we've got some others that we're going to continue to be offering and putting out there. And then I actually did this Common Traits by a 45-minute webinar that's out on our website that if folks want to listen to all of those traits, that's out there for anybody to listen to.
And it's not all you do, right? You can go to uncommonfarms.com and you got a whole list of.
Yeah, uncommonfarms.com/session will get you to the registration information for the workshops, plus this webinar and a bunch of other tools and resources. So,
Cool.
Yep.
That is awesome. So I'm going to have your two kids slide in onto Mike's to kind of talk about what they've gotten to experience and tell us a little bit there too. Dave, I don't know if they don't want to share, maybe we slide yours over as well, but why don't you start off and introduce yourselves, tell us how old you are, and then we'll ask you some questions.
I'm Mike Downey, and I'm 12 years old.
I'm Luke Downey, and I'm 8 years old.
Had to think about that for a second.
So 12 and 8, right? And you got a special shirt on. Go ahead and pull that microphone closer to you. Tell us a little bit about your shirt.
Our shirt is, it says 1872 because that's when our Downey farm was founded, and that's also why it says Downey. And we got them made because a couple years ago we had the Heritage Fair, we had our Heritage Award at the State Fair. So
What else? What else did we have made?
we got koozies.
And guess what we brought these guys?
Oh, awesome.
Add to your collection.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and my dad had me bring the Heritage.
So we've talked about legacy. Sometimes legacy isn't a farm; it's just memories. And people that came and helped us celebrate that day, and that's just where we stop at here on the way up today.
Yeah, we stopped by the gravesite of Michael and Timothy, who bought the farm, and we stopped by a bunch of grave sites of our ancestors.
You probably think I'm morbid bringing my kids to this.
No,
Heritage,
I was just getting ready to say, that's an interesting thing to think about because there's probably more family history documented in agriculture than I think a lot of other places. You hear about these ancestry reports or whatever that you can put together, but I wonder how many of our listeners' families have that one family member that has this giant cabinet of books of stuff like this is when they crossed and came to the United States. This is when they settled in, wherever it was, or went to Nebraska, which meant they went too far past the good Iowa farm ground.
You might as well just kept going for gold, though.
You talk about communication, it's amazing how many people take for granted that don't forget your farm history and that legacy and carrying that forward, because once you lose that opportunity, it might be lost in translation forever.
As an auctioneer, though, don't keep a bunch of stupid crap that I have to throw away someday when I clean out your estate, because, man, there's a lot of stuff people keep.
Well, I appreciate you bringing the koozies in. Those will definitely be – it's always cool to have things in the studio that we can tell stories about, and that'll be one of those good things. But before we sign off, I want to know right now, because this will be part of your legacy, what's your favorite thing to do at 12, and what's your favorite thing to do at 8?
12.
You say it first.
She's 12. He's 8.
Oh, I was thinking times during the day. Eat lunch and go to bed.
Yeah.
The time is that way.
My favorite thing is probably working with my cows with my dad for the fair.
I heard you had a good fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank
And
you.
I know something better, having fun.
Yeah.
Having fun.
All right.
That's right. That's awesome. Well, thanks for one sitting around here while we talk to your dad. Appreciate you letting us get to spend some time with him, and two for the gifts. We appreciate that.
I love it. Like 18. This is a cool logo. 1872 just makes me want to ask, what is that?
Do we have a
So it's a
bottle?
great conversation starter.
Do we have a bottle of bourbon out there with the same year?
Probably.
Maybe.
Well, we're gonna have to look at that.
Yep.
But yes, listeners, we also appreciate you. Thank you for continuing to suggest topics. But until next time, have a good one.